Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of the Unframe of Mind show. I'm Daniel.
I'm just his weird counterpart who likes to sit around in videos.
Always the awkward introduction with you, man. All right. And today we have a special guest on. His name is Gleb Tsipursky, and he is a professor of history at Ohio State University. He's also a specialist in social and emotional intelligence and decision-making science. As an activist for Truth and Reason, something which seems a little in short supply nowadays, he's currently working on a book set to come out early in 2018 called The Alternative to Alternative Facts, Fighting Post-Truth Politics with Behavioral Science. Welcome to the show, Gleb. It sounds like we have a common mission in battling fake news.
Yes, indeed. So I'm happy to be on the show.
Awesome. I really appreciate you joining us. And So from our conversations, it looks like you're starting a movement in which participants are asked to take the pro-truth pledge. I thought this would be a good place to start. And that's
Sure.
over at protruthpledge.org. We'll make sure there's a link for that in the low bar. So I was curious, what is the significance of this pledge and this movement, and what's the actual driving idea for you on more of a personal level? Like, what makes you tick and want to pursue this endeavor?
Sure. So lots of questions. I'll start with the last one. My personal passion is that I want to make the world less screwed up. And it's very unfortunate that our world is pretty messed up right now. Let's be honest about it. So people are making bad decisions right and left. And that's a passion of mine. I went into this field, this scholarship in decision making and social and emotional intelligence, because I saw people making really bad decisions in all areas of life, from their personal life and their business decisions and their political life. And I wanted to study this. Why do people make bad decisions, and how can we help address these bad decisions with the end goal of relieving world suffering and addressing world suffering? That's what I care about. So about 3 years ago, I founded a nonprofit called Intentional Insights at intentionalinsights.org. And this nonprofit, I've co-founded it with my wife. She knows how to run the back end of a nonprofit. She has an MBA in nonprofit management, over 10 years of experience. So she's been running the back end. I'm more of the front end, kind of the content person. The nonprofit is devoted to popularizing the research on how to make good decisions and avoid disasters in all areas of life. Now, about a year and a half ago, we saw that politics was getting to be the most troublesome area of our society. It was really bad. With this campaign cycle, election cycle, there was so much lies and deception. And knowing the research on how bad lies and deceptions are for democracies, we decided to shift our resources there. There are a number of democracies that transitioned toward very corrupt, very authoritarian states, starting from a place of lies and deceptions. And these are prominent. I mean, recently, we see this happening in Turkey right now, where Turkey is becoming an authoritarian state. We saw it happen in Russia a few years ago, well, a decade and a half ago, when Putin came to power and he transitioned Russia from a democratic state to an authoritarian one. We saw it happen in other major democracies. We saw it happen in Germany, in Italy, in Portugal, in Spain, and elsewhere. So it's a big concern for me, knowing the history of how democracies transition to authoritarian states. And so that's what we decided to focus on, our energy on addressing this problem. And the Pro-Truth Pledge is one major outcome, a major tool that we are trying to use to address this problem. And it's meant to reverse the tide of lies in our politics. It's meant to fight this fake news, this viral deception that has been pervading our political system and our public sphere recently. So it's at protruthpledge.org, as you mentioned, and listeners can follow along as we talk about the Pro-Truth Pledge at the website at protruthpledge.org, so that they can see what we're talking about. But that's the point of the Pro-Truth Pledge, and that's my background, and that's why I came to this. And we can talk about how the Pro-Truth Pledge works, but I just want to give you a broad overview first.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great introduction, and it's neat to see where people are coming from on these different topics, to see what actually drives them to want to move forward with these huge goals and these huge endeavors like that. That's one of the things that we had also looked at is there seems to be a huge amount of people out there claiming they can tell us what fake news is and things like that. And when we had written our guide, our fake news guide, we had decided, okay, we're gonna look at this from as objective a perspective as we possibly can, and not just try to give people a list of websites that we consider to be fake. And it seems like this pro-truth pledge is also built similarly in that it starts with kind of your basic core principles and then builds out from there. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that is absolutely fair to say. So the pro-truth pledge, here's how it was put together. Scientists and other experts in this topic of how people are oriented toward the truth or not, and why they behave in certain ways, looked at truth-oriented behaviors. What are behaviors that research suggests are most likely to lead to the truth, by which we mean an accurate evaluation of reality? So what is most likely to lead to this outcome? I'm not going to tell you what the truth is in specific instances. It's more about the process. The essence is the process. How do you get to the truth? What kind of behaviors are most likely to lead to the truth? And so we came up with a list of 13 behaviors that are most likely to lead to the truth. I'll read some of them to you just so you can consider them. So the first one is, I will strive to avoid sharing misinformation, by which we mean either clear lies or statements that go against reliable fact-checking organizations or the scientific consensus in a given topic, even in service to a cause I believe is good. And another one is verify. Before I share information, I will make a reasonable effort to ensure it is true. Then retract. If my information is challenged, I will make a reasonable effort to verify that it is true before repeating it, and retract it if I cannot verify. Celebrate updating. Yeah. I will gladly celebrate those who retract incorrect statements and update their beliefs toward the truth. So this is kind of 4 out of 13 behaviors, and we can go through the others. But these are just behaviors that research shows are most likely to lead to an accurate evaluation of reality, both for yourself and for others around you. So it's meant to be not only for people themselves, it's mainly socially oriented. How do you have a society that is truth-oriented? And that's what this pledge is.
Yeah, I like how you have these different behaviors, and it's neat because I can then take these behaviors and I can look at other people and see if they're following the same principles to try to validate if their source is correct, and then if they do make a mistake, are they willing to retract that information, things like that. And if I see that kind of those behaviors are present, whether I disagree with them or not, I know that at least we can have a conversation. At least we can make a move toward maybe trying to pinpoint what the truth actually is. And it makes it where people on opposite sides of different debates and things can come together and actually not be at each other's throat the entire time. That's because like you said at the beginning, it just seems like we're in trouble, man. That
we are.
Everybody is constantly battling. I saw a video the other day. Now it was actually this morning, where this gentleman is just standing there. All he has is a sign that basically says that we need to defend the right to have open debate and open conversations. And
nice.
That's all it said. He was not saying what side of any debate he was on. That is literally all that these people had to go on. And there was a huge crowd around him, running him off, calling him racist and fascist and running him off. And it's like that. There's no conversation going on. These people are obviously not following these principles that you've put forth in this truth pledge.
Clearly not. Clearly not. No, I think the benefit of the pro-truth pledge, where we want to get to eventually, is that if you want to have a conversation with anyone, you want to first make sure that person signs the pro-truth pledge as well as you, and then you can align around these 13 behaviors, and you could say, hey, are you, should I waste my time talking to you if you're just going to be shouting at me and not having a productive conversation? Or if we both agree to these 13 principles of behavior in a way that we engage with each other, sort of a social contract. If we agree to these 13 principles of behavior, then I know I can have a good, productive conversation with you. And if one of us happens to not be following one of the principles, we can just call each other out and say, hey, you're not celebrating updating, or you're not retracting when you're challenged and you can't verify it. And then we could call each other out on principles that we both agreed on are worthwhile. So this is a very good basis for a social contract and conversations with each other. It's a very nonpartisan thing. Anyone from any side of the spectrum who doesn't want to lie is wonderfully able and encouraged to take the pledge, and therefore you know that this person is going to be trustworthy and reliable as a collaborative partner in a conversation.
I absolutely noticed that there was a huge lack of any kind of language in this that would put one side over another or anything like that. Like you said, very nonpartisan, and that's what I strive for, and that's what I look for in other people, in the things that they create, like this pledge here. And just to be able to see, okay, wait, where are they coming from? Are you coming from a neutral position on this? Are you coming from a place of logic and reason and evidence? And it helps. My question to you was going to be about in actual practice. How does this show up in practice? Like, say I go on Facebook and I'm in some kind of group and there's a discussion that sparks up. Would I maybe start the conversation with them, and then if they seem to be violating one of these rules, then I would kind of forward them this link and say, hey, I'm not going to continue this conversation with you unless you can follow these simple steps, or would this? Are you picturing this more of as a preemptive strike, like something like, we're not even going to start talking at all until we can agree at least on this?
Yes. So what the research shows is that it's much better to first align on the boundaries and rules of the conversation. It's called the meta conversation. The meta conversation is the conversation about the conversation. How are we going to talk about this?
I love it.
Yes. So how are we going to talk about this topic? Because if we get into a topic and it's a heated debate, and then somebody says, well, let me pull out these rules and let's follow these rules, the other person gets defensive. The other person feels like, well, they're just like giving their own thing and saying you need to follow this own thing. If they're in an emotionally aroused state, what the research shows is that people are unlikely to actually listen to you. Whether they're defensive and shutting down or aggressive and shouting at you, this is not the time to bring this out. This is the time to bring this out is beforehand.
Oh, it's almost like playing a game of football and then trying to say, yes, wait a minute, the rules say this, and we haven't already agreed on rules ahead of time.
Exactly. It's like playing a game and then trying to introduce rules in the middle. No.
Yeah, that's not cool. Not at all.
That's not cool. Right, exactly. So you want to introduce these at the beginning. So whenever you have a contentious conversation or anticipate that you will have a contentious conversation, you can anticipate these are going to be contentious conversations if you disagree with someone. This is the good time to whip out the pledge and say, hey, let's agree to abide by the pledge. And then we can proceed forward to have a very positive, collaborative conversation. I've had conversations with many people, liberal or conservative, on radio shows and elsewhere, using these guidelines, using these rules, and it was very productive and very helpful. Otherwise, people would be shouting at each other, and it would not be helpful.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I see it. But the issue I see with this is that it seems that people will need a predisposition to want to actually talk truth with each other. Even in several of these states that you'll sit there and acknowledge that facts are true even when they disagree with the person's conclusion or position. And also balance on here. I will do my best to share true information even if it does not support my opinion. A lot of people I don't think are ready to take... They might take all 12 out of these 13, but the balanced one, they don't want to share the true information that's going to hurt their position. So how do we go about getting people to get on board with something like that?
Right. So that's the kind of question. Do you want to spend your time talking with people who will not do their best to share true information, even if it doesn't support their opinion?
Okay, so it starts with you, basically.
Yeah, this is a filter. Like, which people do you want to engage with? Do you want to engage with people who are ideologues and are committed to just arguing for their position and not updating their beliefs or changing their minds or sharing true information or any of these things?
I've never heard of anybody like that. I've never met anybody like that. What are you talking about, this creature?
Yes. Do you want to actually spend your time with these people? Or do you want to spend your time with people with whom you can have a healthy and productive conversation if you both can agree on a set of rules and guidelines that leads you to have a healthy and productive conversation? There's so many.
Oh, that is something that I notice when sometimes I catch myself in these debates online with people that I know at the get-go that I'm not going to convince them, and it's just more of my own self-indulgence that I'm trying to argue back and be all snarky and show that trying to show my superiority in some way, shape, or form. But it's the fact that our life here is so finite and so precious, and if I was to, if people were to take all that time they spend arguing with people that they know for a fact is never going to lead to anything, and actually, position that in a direction that's going to actually show some kind of forward momentum or forward progression, I think we could get so much more done.
Exactly, and
I'm not even going to pretend there was a question in that.
No, our society has become much more polarized than it used to be in the past. And this is a way to depolarize our society. This is a way to see, okay, are you willing, of all the people in the United States, how many are willing to take the pro-truth pledge when it's placed before them? I will bet that there are going to be many who are really tired of the polarization in our society, of the lies and deceptions that are uttered both by ordinary people and by public figures and politicians. We can talk about that. It's meant for them to take it as well. Now, once we know who are the people with whom we can have a collaborative and productive conversation, you're going to be seeing a lot of people on different sides of the political divide take this, of religious divides, of various, faith, whatever. You're going to see a lot of people across the political divide and other divides take this pledge, and then you can have a productive and healthy conversation with them that results in a greater understanding and actual compromise moving forward on decision-making that's relevant, policy decisions, whatever decisions you want. So this is the way that you go forward and address the polarization and hostility and lies in our society.
Well, my question would be then, how do we bring those people in who don't have a predisposition to want to do this so we can spread the word and we can get it out there and we can get more people in on this who actually might not necessarily already thinking about doing this, but get the detractors from it to come in, besides like you and like me and like Daniel here, who would love to do this so we can actually push progression forward. But how do we get those other people on this?
Or should we? Should we?
Yes,
everybody needs to be in on this.
We should. So let me talk through how the details of the pledge work, and then you will see how we get these people on board.
Sounds good.
So any of your listeners who are on protruthpledge.org right now can click on the orange button that says "Take the Pledge," and then we can go through the steps of how the pledge works. So the first things that you do, you put in the required steps are your name, email, and those are required things. Then you can have the option of putting in your home address. What the point of that is that we can then there's a section below that says, I call on all of my elected representatives to take the pro-truth pledge. That's everyone from your district judge to your town council person and mayor to your congressional representative, senator, governor, and all the way up to the president. So one aspect of the pledge functions as a petition. When you sign it and you put in your address, people who are volunteers for the pro-truth pledge can then gather up those names and signatures, electronic signatures, and go to your congressperson or whatever and say, hey, here's how many of your constituents signed the pro-truth pledge. Will you sign the pro-truth pledge? So that's why the address is there. Then people can sign up for email updates and action alerts, and we'll talk about why that's important. And then people can sign up to help with the pro-truth pledge. This involves things like plenty, just posting about it in various social media groups, so spreading the word, or going to local rallies and so on, the Rotary clubs, giving presentations on it, getting signatures, so getting people to sign up. For example, we had at this March for Science in Columbus, we had something like 150 people signing up to the pro-truth pledge just from tabling. So that's a lot of people from just one event. So that's something you can do. You can go and lobby public officials and media figures and so on to take the pledge. That's another thing you can do. And you can monitor and evaluate public figures who took the pro-truth pledge. So that's another thing that people can do when they sign up to help with the pro-truth pledge. So that's how people, ordinary citizens, private citizens, that's what they can do. Now, what about public figures? Public figures is anyone who has a voice in the public sphere, whether it's local elected town council official, all the way, up to the highest political leaders, but also media figures, journalists, podcast hosts, you two, who goes on
like YouTubers, like Unframe of Mind.
Absolutely, exactly, like you too, exactly.
Right.
So then anyone who has an impact on the public sphere, prominent bloggers and so on. Now, there's a section on that says that on the pledge it says, "Are you a public figure?" And then if you're a public figure, then you can add a paragraph about why you chose to take the pledge, and links to any shows, to any of your shows, let's say, Unframe of Mind, or if you're a political candidate, your campaign page and social media presence and so on. So that is something you can do. Now, why is that beneficial for you, for any public figure who takes that? Well, here we go to the email updates. So this is why we want everyone to sign for email updates, because we send out a twice a month newsletter, which includes the blurb from each public figure who signs up to the Pro-Truth Pledge. So the more people sign up to the Pro-Truth Pledge, the more ordinary citizens, the more benefits public figures have from signing up to the Pro-Truth Pledge, because they get their information to be spread to all of these people. Now imagine if you're a podcaster, like you two, Unframe of Mind, right? And you know that your paragraph and your email and your blurb will be spread out to all the people who signed up for the Pro-Truth Pledge. That's great. You get a bigger audience and you get a reputation as someone who's oriented toward the truth, and you'll draw away some of the audience from people who haven't signed the Pro-Truth Pledge, because the audience for the Pro-Truth Pledge knows that you're reliable, you're more trustworthy than Joe Schmo, out there.
That's exactly what I was going to say. When the public figures or the senators that sign up for this, then the people who are in the circle of the Pro-Truth Pledge could be able to hold them accountable, saying, hey, you know what, you said this in one of your debates, that kind of doesn't line up with what we're doing here.
Exactly.
Like you said, that makes them more accountable, and gives them, I guess, better in the limelight, too. It makes them look good.
Yep, exactly. So it's reputation. So we've looked at the research for what makes people act more truthfully from public society perspective, public figures, and reputational benefits. So reputational rewards make them act more truthfully. Now, we're going to set up, so this was launched just over a month ago. Mm-hmm. We are intending to set up a database on the website of all the public figures who took the Pro-Truth Pledge, so that journalists can then go and see who took the Pro-Truth Pledge and see if that person has been aligning with the truth and so on. So that gives them a public reputation, not only among people who took the Pro-Truth Pledge, but any external observers, any journalists, anyone who wants to check that out. So that gives them a reputation. Now, that's the reputational benefit. So people have a good reputational benefit for taking the Pro-Truth Pledge. And another nice thing is that they can talk about it to their constituents. So this is a way to spread. Let's say, you have a senator who took the Pro-Truth Pledge, and that senator tells he has an obvious benefit to tell his constituents that he took the Pro-Truth Pledge. So that's a way to spread the Pro-Truth Pledge. So you're asking, how do you spread the Pro-Truth Pledge to people who aren't already oriented toward the Pro-Truth Pledge? Well,
so this is the way. It's sort of like a challenge, like, hey, I promise to sit there and tell the people that I'm representing the truth. What are you doing?
Yes, exactly. So the senator will tell his constituents that he took the Pro-Truth Pledge. Or, a governor will tell her constituents, or a podcast show host will tell their constituents, and so on. So that's a way, through these public figures, through these influencers, that word about the Pro-Truth Pledge will spread, and their constituents, some of them will want to sign it because they're like, yes, this is a good idea. A person I trust and respect who is, my leader, my congressional representative, whatever, the podcast host who I listen to, took the Pro-Truth Pledge, let me go and sign it. because they think it's a good thing to do. And there's research showing there's a phenomenon called the halo effect, where someone whose words you respect, when they endorse something, you're more likely to go and follow that as well. This is why celebrities do commercials.
Yeah, I learned that in marketing class.
There you go. Exactly. So this is a way to spread this to many more people than just would ordinarily gravitate toward the pro-truth pledge. Now, these politicians, public figures, who takes the pro-truth pledge, they're held accountable as well. So there's a clear monitoring, evaluating, and punishing mechanism for people who violate the pro-truth pledge and who choose not to retract their words, and we can talk about that. But that's basically the mechanism by which we would spread the pro-truth pledge, and why public figures have an incentive to take it, and why we want all people who are listening to this show right now, and all people everywhere essentially, to take the pro-truth pledge, to provide that basis and to provide that incentive for public figures.
Now, Gleb, one thing I'm noticing about this that I really appreciate, especially coming from more of an anarchist perspective, is the fact that this kind of thing doesn't require any kind of government intervention. It doesn't require some law to shut people down and try to dictate what's free speech, what's hate speech. It doesn't require any kind of a big business or anything like that to try to control the flow of fake news or anything like that. It holds people accountable for their own thing. It feels more like a
feels very natural is what it does.
Yeah, almost like a common law type of thing where people hold each other accountable. There's social ostracism element that you can introduce here that people won't even interact with you if you haven't agreed to this social contract of sorts. And that's what I really appreciate the most of this, is that you don't, there's no force here. There's nobody forcing me to do this.
There's no force. It's all a social contract. People can choose to opt in. It's not like you are forced to do this. It's not like taxes or something. It's like you can choose to opt in, or you can join this community of truth tellers or not, and it's up to you. And it's very much built on the Wikipedia model, kind of, people coming together to crowdsource the truth, essentially.
So I almost wonder if in the future you could get this set up where, people I'm thinking something that'll help you guys out is this reminds me of like a better housekeeping seal of approval, or a better business bureau type agency where, if you have a good standing in the community, you can have like a little logo put on your website or something like that. For people who take the pro-truth pledge, if the listeners who are following along can go to the blog page. So at the top of the page of the pro-truth pledge, there are 3 buttons on the left. So the pro-truth pledge homepage, then the blog page, and the merchandise page. On the blog page, the first blog right now is a pro-truth pledge website badge. So people who take the pro-truth pledge and have an online presence, let's say, Unframe of Mind, or a politician, or someone. We have a number of politicians who took the pro-truth pledge, and a number of website hosts who are podcast hosts. Anyone who takes it can have it if they have if you have a personal website, like let's say you're a private citizen, but you have a professional website, for some reason you run a small business. You can put this pro-truth pledge badge on your website saying that you took the pro-truth pledge. And that's the equivalent of the PPP, exactly. The seal of approval. Mm-hmm. Oh, very cool.
Yep.
I suppose I'll probably be adding that to the website.
The only negative thing I don't like about it is the TPP, and this is the PTP.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no, you have a branding nightmare on your hands, sir.
No.
That's funny.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit here and talk about something a little bit different. And this upcoming book that you are working on.
before the book, do you? I want to talk through and make sure that your listeners know what are the punishments for breaking the pledge.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a great one. Let's touch on that, and I'll just make a note of.
I would like to talk about the book too. When Daniel initially said that at the beginning of the show, I was like, "Hey, I want to know about that. I want to know about that."
All right.
Yes.
So what kind of punishments?
All right. Yes. So it's on the third FAQ for listeners who are following along and looking at the website at protruthpledge.org. So the pledge is violated basically when you share misinformation, and there are three things that we define as misinformation. One is clear lies. If I say 2 + 2 = 3, or something like it's July right now for some reason, whatever. Clear lies, everyone could recognize them. That's one. Second is if you violate the pledge if you go against a clear scientific consensus. Whether it's something like, let's say climate change denial, and you say that, climate change, human-caused climate change is not happening, but we have a scientific consensus that it is. And the scientific consensus we can see by polls of scientists. So if over 90% of scientists say something, we consider that the scientific consensus, and we have something like 97% of scientists saying that human-caused climate change is significant, big, and happening, and also by meta-analysis of studies. Meta-analysis is analysis of a number of studies, let's say 50 studies together, and there's a review of these studies. If it comes to a definitive conclusion, that's scientific consensus. So that's scientific consensus. And finally, reliable and credible fact-checking organizations. So that's the third thing that we consider something that is determination of what is true and what is not true. So those are three things. Now, if we find that somebody is a public figure, so again, this is not for private citizens, this is for public figures. If a public figure has lied and somebody who is evaluating that public figure, so again, of all the people who signed the pledge, some can become advocates. Of those advocates, volunteers. Of those volunteers, some will be assigned to watch over public figures who took the pro-truth pledge. And so if an advocate believes that a public figure, let's say the mayor of Los Angeles, violated the pledge and they lied about something, then the public figure or shared misinformation. Then the advocate goes to the public figure quietly privately with a presumption of innocence until proven guilty, and says, hey, what's going on here? Maybe I misheard something, or maybe you misspoke, but I think this doesn't match reality, this thing that you said. And then they have an opportunity to address the situation. If the public figure retracts her words, that's great. We celebrate updating. If the public figure explains that this wasn't an actual violation of the pledge, that they didn't share misinformation, that's cool as well. The next stage is if the public figure doesn't retract her words and the advocate for the pro-truth pledge still believes that there's a violation of the pledge, that the public figure shared misinformation. So the next step is to go to a mediating committee. Now, we wanted to make sure the mediating committee is made up of vetted volunteers, and so this would be the mediating committee for the Los Angeles area. We wanted to make sure that the pledge is not going to be trolled. Anyone who can sign up for the pro-truth pledge immediately can become an advocate. However, the mediating committee is more of the next level. It's made up of vetted volunteers who've been part of the movement for a while and who we trust. So the mediating committee then evaluates the situation and approaches the mayor and says, hey, can you clarify this? Now, if the matter is not resolved at that stage, somebody from the central coordinating committee of the pro-truth pledge comes in. And the central coordinating committee, it's like the Wikipedia central organizing body. It's the people who are basically managing the pledge from the volunteer body that manages the pledge. And so that person checks the work of the mediating committee to make sure that everything is going fine. If they still find that the person shared misinformation, public figure, mayor of Los Angeles, and the mayor of Los Angeles refuses to retract her words, that's the first time that it actually goes public. So we issue a media advisory to all the media in the Los Angeles area saying that the mayor is in contempt of the pledge. We put on the website that the mayor is in contempt of the pledge. We put it out through our social media. And then here's where the action alerts come into play. So we send out action alerts to all the people in the Los Angeles area, saying that the mayor of Los Angeles is in a violation of is in contempt of the pro-truth pledge, and that they should tweet the mayor, email the mayor, write the mayor, call the mayor, protest the mayor, that they should write letters to the editor, post on social media, basically make a big stink about the mayor being in contempt of the pro-truth pledge. So by now, we know that the mayor has a number of chances to retract her words, and the mayor chose not to. So we can pretty clearly see that the mayor is actually intending to lie. And that's what the pledge is meant to prevent at the basis. And so this is a pretty harsh punishment, pretty big media hit.
Yeah, but you took them through the steps that you said,
Yes.
hey, this is what you said. Here's the actual consensus, and here's the truth behind it, and you still don't want to retract it. Well, then, of course, we're going to ostracize you now. You had plenty of chances. You didn't want to. It is what it is.
Yep. So we figure that it's very unlikely that people who, basically the mayor of Los Angeles, if she intends to lie, she's better off not signing the pro-truth pledge in the first place. And this goes for any public figure who is like, oh, let me sign this thing and get reputational benefits, and then not hold to it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the stick behind the carrot.
That makes sense.
So we're crowdsourcing for truth with this.
Exactly.
That is awesome.
This is the point. Yep.
So
This is the crowdsourcing for truth.
Let me critique this just a little bit. What I'm curious about is how do you prevent kind of a mob rule or mob justice kind of thing from kicking into place? Like just because 90% of this group agrees that the truth is X, but somebody is saying Y. How do you, and maybe they have good evidence to back it up. It might even be controversial to the common, rule, I guess. How do you prevent people from trying to shut that person down or giving them a bad reputation or things like that? And when years from now you might find out, oh, maybe they were telling the truth, and now that we've got this new research, or maybe we've looked further into it, you know what I'm saying?
Sure. So this relates back to everything that is considered misinformation, and that's the FAQ question too. So things like, what is the truth? Clear lies that everyone can see are lies. That's obvious. The second one is, I think the relevant one is going to be the scientific consensus. So let's say if someone later finds out that human-caused global climate change is not happening, now I think that's incredibly unlikely, but it's not out of the realm of the possible. There could be little green angels causing climate change, right? So, who knows, right? So it's not out of the realm of the possible, but the point is that this person signed the pledge knowing that they are going to align with the scientific consensus. And if they are not going to align with the scientific consensus, then they shouldn't sign the pledge. This is a very simple thing. It's not about the ultimate truth, because the ultimate truth can't be known. We have the best mechanisms that we know of to know the truth, and that's science. Science is the best mechanism that we as human beings have to know the truth. It's not impossible that science gets things wrong, and it's great that it gets things wrong because it updates itself. But let's be honest, we are not going to be knowing better than the experts on climate change. I will definitely delegate my opinion on climate change to the expert on climate change, because she's been studying this for ages, and I'm just the person reading the reports, right?
Right.
Now I'm an expert in my area in behavioral science, and I'll be able to very comfortably talk about the scientific consensus there, but I'm not going to be talking about the scientific consensus, like the details on climate change or something like that. Now, we have an exemption for scientists, and that's part of the section on scientists. Why should I sign up for the pro-truth pledge? For scientists, we allow scientists, specifically scientists only who are working in the field, to not align with the scientific consensus, because that's kind of the way the discoveries are made and previous paradigms are changed. So we only allow people who are scientists and experts in the field to not align with the scientific consensus. But otherwise, all of us should align with the scientific consensus.
I guess there's a difference between proposing an alternative possibility versus stating it as if it's truth and building arguments and building your information from that. Like say I'm a public figure and I'm out there just saying, well, global warming is fake no matter what. Earth is flat, and not trying to back it up. I guess that's a difference between proposing the idea versus stating it as if it's fact. I guess that kind of allows some breathing room for people who, like our show, we really do talk about a lot of controversial subjects that aren't necessarily a
lot of them are very subjective though, not objective.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's totally fine to say something like 3% of climate change scientists don't believe that human-caused climate change is a significant factor in climate change. That's an accurate statement. There's nothing wrong with saying that. So now, as long as you're not saying human-caused climate change is not happening, there's a big difference between those two sorts of statements,
All right. Let me. We're gonna try to wrap this up here in just a moment. But before we go, I wanted to get just a little bit of insight into this book that's coming up. Just give you a chance to kind of riff on it for a minute or two and give us an idea what we can expect from this upcoming book. Because I'm really curious about that one.
Sure. So the book basically examines why people believe in lies, alternative facts, and how do we communicate to people in such a way that they stop believing in these alternative facts, in these lies, and how do we actually get them to orient toward the truth? So there have been a lot of books published that talk about like, oh, here's how our brains are screwed up. Here's why we believe in lies, and isn't that great that our brains are all screwed up? Well, that's not what I want to write. I want to write a book that doesn't simply talk about why our brains are screwed up. I want to talk about why our brains are screwed up. That's one. Second, how politicians and other public figures, mainly politicians, are taking advantage of this, which is why it's about post-truth politics. It's focused on things like the 2016 election campaign. That's the main focus of it, to examine a case study, and it goes into other case studies like what's happening in Turkey, what's happening in Russia, what happened in Brexit, and so on. And then the last part is, how do we address this? How do we address these problems in human beings and in our political system? And in order to fight post-truth politics and get to a post-lies politics, get to a new world where we actually are oriented toward the truth. And the pro-truth pledge is talked about in the book, but there are many other things that I talk about, how that individual readers can implement in their lives and in their engagement in order to change our society.
Let me ask you though, this idea of post-truth politics, is it fair to say that this has been going on forever? I don't know. I don't think this is necessarily a new phenomenon. I suspect it has more to do with the new internet and the fact that we're just becoming more exposed and more aware of it now. Is it? Do you think it's a new thing, or is it just more exposed now?
So Oxford Dictionary chose post-truth politics as its word of the year in 2016 due to the US presidential election and the UK Brexit Leave campaign. And it doesn't say it. Politicians have always lied to some extent. The new thing, which post-truth politics refers to, is politics based on lies and deceptions and appeals to personal beliefs and emotions winning out over politics based on appeal to facts and reality. So that's the difference. That's where post-truth politics comes in. It's just a political atmosphere where these sorts of appeals triumph over appeals to truth and reality. So we saw that, if you compare the fact-checking websites, the Remain campaign of Brexit in the UK was much more truthful than the Leave campaign, but the Leave campaign won.
So they were basically just appealing to people's emotions is what they were doing.
Yes. Yep. Appeal to people's emotions and lying, and they still won. The same thing in the US. Hillary Clinton, according to fact-checking organizations, lied about 3 times less than Donald Trump, but Donald Trump won. So this, again, is the same thing. It's appeals to emotions and deceptions winning out over people who are more truthful and honest. So this is what post-truth politics refers to. And yes, it is something new in that people who practice it win out over those who don't.
And do you think this is the reason why there's such a huge polarization between people nowadays?
Yeah, it's a major reason why it's a huge reason why there's this polarization, because post-truth politics enables that. Then people can lie. If we don't agree on the truth, on what is the truth of reality, then we can say whatever is in our minds, and which doesn't at all align necessarily with the truth of reality. And of course, you'll get polarization because you'll be further away from the truth. The truth is going to be somewhere, and then if people are just going to imagine things like little green angels causing global warming, then they are going to be polarized. And here we have, increasing numbers of people who don't believe in climate change, let's say, or stuff like that, because they're like, well, what do I care about the truth if I can just present my perspective for economic reasons of gain and so on? And so that is the problem. That is why that is what post-truth politics refers to. Or the same thing in the, it's not simply a U.S. phenomenon. In the UK Leave campaign, there were a number of lies that were called out a whole bunch of times. For example, that 350 million pounds is going to be spent on the UK healthcare system per week after the Leave campaign is successful. Lie. Called out a number of times before the Leave campaign won. The Leave campaign still won. Then after they won, they acknowledged that it was a lie, but the vote had already taken place. So,
what I think I like the most about this is that you are not trying to treat symptoms of the issue. You're trying to cure the underlying disease that is lies and people not wanting the truth and just appealing to emotions. I think that's what I like most about this, because you can go through a swamp and trudge through the mud, and when you're halfway there, you're so tired, you can go back to the truth or keep going forward, and most people probably just end up going forward because it's closer to get out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, this is really important to look at the underlying issues. Partially, it's a matter of where do you want to spend your resources. You can spend your resources on the individual battles. Let's say there are lots of, you can fight around the environment. You can fight around healthcare. You can fight around, economic policy. You can fight around defense spending. But what are you actually going to get? You're going to get like some small movements around and lots of conflicts.
Black Lives Matter.
But if you go back to the underlying things about what is the truth, you're going to get so much further in the end, in the long term.
Yeah, all those little things are just going to fall into place where they should.
Exactly. If you don't polarize each other, if you fight about these things, then you result in polarization and conflict. If you go back and go to the fundamentals about the truth, then you're going to be so much better off having compromise. If the only people who are able to make decisions about the environment are people who took the pro-truth pledge, wouldn't we be so much better off?
Yeah, I'd say you're right on.
And on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up here, Mr. Tsipursky. I sure appreciate you coming on and sharing with us this pro-truth pledge and giving us a little more insight into what's involved in it and the potential implications of what the world might look like if people were to follow these kind of principles. So thank you.
I appreciate your support, and I'm glad that you two are going to be supportive of this and taking the pro-truth pledge. That's awesome.
Oh no, I didn't say I was taking the pledge. No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought you did.
We're going to be pushing this like crack.
Yeah,
that's basically what we're going to do with it.
I'm just messing with you. At any rate, if y'all want to check that out, be sure to click the link down the low bar there and read up on it. There's a huge FAQ section to answer any kind of concerns you might have, and
awesome.
We'll just take it from there. So
I think this is the coolest thing I've seen in a while.
Yeah,
and trying to hold everybody, whether you're a citizen or you're a journalist or you're in the government, to hold yourself accountable and other people hold you accountable. This blows my mind, man, and I just say thank you for creating this.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I can
Thank you.
virtually hear you. You're blushing over the mic.
I am, man. This thing's awesome.